This is the Liz Harrison Show.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Liz Harrison. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio, or if you're listening to the later broadcast on K98talk.com, thank you for listening there. Otherwise, this is Wednesday. I had to think about it. I'm having a rough week. January 14th. Charlie Hebdo Day, right? They released the magazine. The new magazine cover has a picture of Muhammad in tears. Now, we have to see whether or not it's going to get everybody all upset again. Personally, CARE came out with a statement about it, saying that they have to attempt tolerance and have real conversations or something like that. I don't know exactly what they meant. I'm not sure they knew exactly what they meant, but hey, that probably happens on a daily basis over there. I'm not a huge fan of them. But it appears that they're at least not trying to throw fuel on the fire. So, give them a little something. Nah, I don't like doing that. Anyway, hopefully we won't see any more violence break out. And no, I'm not going to sit here and hammer away at it. It's not something that needs to be brought up every single day. And besides, I promised to talk about guns or something. And arguably, maybe some people would think, oh, that means violence. No, it doesn't. Here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there's a bit of a hullabaloo coming up. Here we have a new law, Act 192 of 2014. Governor Tom Corbett, arguably the only thing that he might have done that could have saved his rear, but unfortunately he did it on November 6th, so that wasn't really helpful in the election. He finally signed it into law. It was passed in the final days of the 2013-14 session of the General Assembly. Among other things, well, the big issue that has everybody going is it establishes criminal penalties for the theft of copper, aluminum wire, etc. But it was amended to include a provision that expands the rights of groups like the NRA to challenge local gun ordinances. Okay? Now let's be clear here. Said gun ordinances would be ones that go over and above whatever the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania already has enacted. Yes, we're looking at you, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg. Philadelphia is arguably the worst. Yes, I do understand. Urban centers, you think that you need a different law. You are a different type of territory. You're important. No. You've got your heads in the sand. That's a difference. But Chicago should have proved this to people by now. I mean, I like Chicago for one reason. Have very, very strict gun laws. Have one of the highest murder rates by guns in the entire nation. How's that gun law working for you there? See, it's really mind-boggling. Gun laws do not stop criminals. I could say it until I'm blue in the face. I have said it until I'm blue in the face. Gun laws do not stop criminals. Police officers cannot be everywhere. And let's all be honest here, folks, given the antipathy that everybody seems to have, especially on the left, toward law enforcement, you don't want them everywhere. And please, stop insulting everyone's intelligence. A place does not become a safe zone when somebody says, "Don't bring your guns here." It is a magnet for the crazies and the criminals to come there and shoot lots of people because they don't have to worry about anybody shooting back. Oh, mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Anyway, as for Pennsylvania's laws, yes, it's going to be an interesting situation. They're trying to get the law knocked down in Commonwealth Court. I know a couple of the people on that bench, and I'm hoping cooler heads prevail and common sense takes hold, because the fact that no third parties like the NRA are able to challenge these laws in court has caused them to remain on the books. That's the only reason why they have. And they still will, no matter what Act 192 says, because if the areas in question that pass these laws know that you have to depend on and the other part of this whole thing, the legalities involved. The third party issue means that the individuals bringing the suit do not have to show that they have suffered any harm as a result of the law. And I know that normally makes people get squeamish and think, wait a minute here, you should suffer some harm. Well, the NRA doesn't suffer any harm from these laws. They can't prove it in court. However, law-abiding citizens do. And unfortunately, when it comes to proving harm in a court of law, simply saying that the inability to carry a weapon in a specific circumstance usually will not be something that would be actionable and you'd be able to show harm. And I'm going to be completely honest here. You want to know what the lawsuits would be as a result of these laws? And I honestly wish that people would do this. I really do. If the circumstances arise, I have not heard of them doing so. I hope that they don't, because it is tragic. But these municipalities should seriously look at this law as something that is a good thing, because the alternative is far worse. Because you prevent law-abiding citizens from carrying a weapon. The big reason why they would sue you for making it impossible for them to do so, in contradiction with existing gun laws in the state, would be because somebody got hurt or died. So the lawsuit would be, say, a man and wife, are in one of these municipalities. They get attacked. The man is unarmed because he's following your crackpot law, because he's a law-abiding citizen, so he doesn't have a weapon. And they get mugged. And let's say the mugger has a gun, because that person doesn't obey the law, remember? And the mugger shoots his wife, and she dies. Because he was unarmed, he was unable to protect her. And, well, the police aren't everywhere, so they weren't there to protect her either. So instead of just being sued by the NRA, which could end up with you paying for legal fees and all sorts of fun stuff like that, no, on top of that, you're going to be sued by a man who is going to be suing you for wrongful death. in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, just for the record, in a situation like this, those lawsuits have a pantload of zeros involved. And they usually win. So, this law's doing you a favor, folks. It really is. The NRA is a hell of a lot cheaper than a wrongful death suit. And please stop lying. Stop lying. It's really disingenuous. I mean, we've got the petri dish when it comes to gun ownership. It's called Kennesaw, Georgia. Yeah, they require the people possess guns, and their crime rate has gone down. Now, when I looked this up, of course, on the Google, I ended up seeing something that I hadn't seen before because, I'm sorry, I don't sit there and read every last thing. But the shooting in April, it didn't occur to me then, at the FedEx facility. 6 people were shot. There were many people injured. None of the individuals died except for the gunman. The actual gun ownership rate in Kennesaw hovers at around 50% because the law is not enforced, according to the police chief. But it's still higher than the average 34%. Okay? Basically, these people are saying that overthink progress, that you let the people have guns, you still have shootings. Yeah. It still happens. However, only one person died, and it was the gunman. And he shot himself, I think. No, this was the one in Illinois did. I don't know. And of course they're talking about assault rifles, which don't really exist. Anyway, Kennesaw, Georgia, as a general rule, has a much lower crime rate. They do have the occasional aberration. Unfortunately, it made national headlines. However, their crimes involving criminals breaking into stores where they're actually open, armed holdups, down to practically nil. Home invasions, down to practically nil. Thefts are occurring in empty properties because the criminals don't want to risk the possibility of coming across a gun owner. They don't want to come across people. Now, I'm not suggesting, even though I really love to say the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania become, since it is, the cradle of liberty for this nation, become the first state to sit there and say the same thing that Kennesaw, Georgia did. That would be great. However, I know it won't happen. But as for this, I'm allowing the NRA to step in and stomp all over local laws that contradict or create more regulations than we already have in the Commonwealth. That is a good idea. And honestly, the situation that we had with a Philadelphia woman who almost ended up in jail in New Jersey should have been a hint. It really should. I mean, what do they want? They want that right here within our own state? You don't have to cross the state line to get into legal trouble for what you're doing as far as a weapon is concerned. You can get into trouble simply for going into the city limits. Oh, that's bright. Philadelphia doesn't think about that. If only it would affect their tourism. Maybe they'd think twice. Just a thought. I know that people get creeped out with the concept of open carry, particularly in urban settings. But seriously, think about that, folks. I mean, down in Texas, it's really bizarre because they're not allowed to carry handguns in the open. So if they're doing open carry, it's with a long weapon. Long rifle. Don't complain. Seriously. Is it so bad if you see somebody carrying a pistol? Not when you put it in consideration with Texas. Yeah. Really. I mean, and honestly, I'm going to be blunt here. There are certain portions of the city of Philadelphia that a person could not pay me to go to. Unless I was able to carry a weapon out in the open. I can't even guarantee that I wouldn't carry with the weapon literally in my hand. I know that's not right to do. I'm just making the point that there are certain neighborhoods within Philadelphia that I would feel much, much better if I didn't even have to take the weapon out of the holster. Just saying. It is that bad. And the people who are armed in those areas, by the way, aren't law-abiding citizens. They're the criminals. And that makes the city of Philadelphia so much safer because they have those stronger gun laws that prevent the law-abiding citizens from battling with the criminals. Oh. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what laws you pass, what kind of guns you can have, or anything else like that, because the criminals will still get them. No. Stop ruling by aberrations, folks. I mean, even though we have had more, theoretically, more mass shootings, the real problem with mass shootings is one of two things. It's either a problem with our criminal justice system, or more likely than not, it is a problem with our mental health system. And I'm not suggesting that you sit there and make gun laws preventing people who are crazy from getting guns. No, that's not the solution. The solution is this stupid, idiotic patients' rights situation that ties the hands of mental health professionals, because let's be honest. Are you telling me that, maybe we have a bigger problem in the mental health industry than I think, but is the excuse now that mental health professionals that are out there dealing with these people are incapable of figuring out whether or not their patients are capable of harming others? Is that the real problem? I mean, I know we get squeamish over the idea of putting somebody in a facility and locking them up. But if the mental health professionals treating them say that they are capable of hurting others, that's where they need to be. I'm sorry, that's the way it works. They are a danger to society. They cannot be in society. That still won't stop all mass shootings, by the way, because not all people with mental issues are actually under the care of mental health professionals and may never be. But at least it would stop some of it. You know, out in California, the child of some celebrities or whatever ended up with the mass shooting. The parents had been begging to have him put away. Why? The people that refused to put him away should be sued for the damage that that boy did, by the way. See, there's laws. There's laws that we need. We need to make it possible for victims like Sandy Hook, the families of them. They shouldn't be suing the gun company. They should be suing the state. Why? Could it possibly be because they passed a law that made it nearly impossible to put the damn shooter under lock and key because he was too crazy? I'm sorry, if you are crazy enough to hurt other people, you don't have rights. Stop it. This squishy, touchy-feely nonsense has to stop. When people become a danger to themselves and, more importantly, others, they don't have rights. We need to get to that point, people. We really do. It's not the gun manufacturer's fault. It's not the fault of the gun dealers. It is not the fault of legal gun owners that happen to have these people in their homes. Unless, of course, they're stupid enough to not lock the damn weapons up and keep the key away from the crazy person. But if they physically break in or somehow manage to find the key, it's not their fault. Not their fault. And when I say somehow manage to find the key, I mean that if the person truly did hide it properly and still the son of a bitch finds it. You know, they didn't make it easy. Because you can't predict. You're talking about crazy. That is something you can't predict. I don't know. It's gotten to the point where people who think that everybody else needs protecting have gotten absolutely out of control. Here I am losing my voice again. Because you got me angry and I raised my voice. Was doing that last night. I need an intervention, folks. Last night I had been on the air. If you missed it, Roundtable of Extreme Liberty. You need to go look that up on VigilantLibertyRadio.us, of course, where you're listening, unless you're catching me on Spreaker or K98 Talk. But, yeah, we had a communist on the air, or socialist Marxist, whatever you want to call him. Charming child. Delusional. Charming child. Oh dear. I really need to not. I know I've said so many times, don't stay in the echo chamber, don't stay in the echo chamber. I get out of the echo chamber, so to speak. I mean, I'm going to be... I don't hang around on social media, talk to people outside of my general political leanings. But I do read what the other side's saying. And I do watch on the television. It's just the interaction that I avoid because it raises my blood pressure as a general rule. And it's rare when I end up getting into conversations with anybody from the other side where it doesn't degenerate into name-calling or because I said so, or I'm entitled to my belief, which that's a real sticking point to me. If you can't back up your beliefs, you're not entitled to them. So, yeah, I don't do the whole play around with the leftist thing. I'll read what they say, but I'm not going to engage with them. I did last night, and I think I'm going to have to go back to the standard. No, we don't engage with the leftists. You either lose your voice or raise your blood pressure or both. I was just very happy. We were just arguing the economy. I'm almost terrified to know what this interesting gentleman would have had to say about freedom of speech. You know, I know they talk about it. I know they say, oh, we're for freedom of speech. But it sort of melts down. You know, I'm for freedom of speech, but only if it's somebody who agrees with me. You know what I mean? I don't yell at these people about what they do or say on the interwebs. I won't argue with them because it doesn't usually end well. And I'm not saying it gets mean or nasty. It just devolves. But I found myself a few times saying to conservatives, you can't sit there and say these people should not be allowed to say what they're saying. Can't do that. They suggest sometimes when they're really, really angry, this site needs to be offline. My new answer, of course, is going to be, what are you, Saudi Arabia? Yeah. I almost want to know what the Marxist had to say about the Saudi blogger and the caning. And I'm still trying to figure out, why hasn't any administration in this country figured out a way to get out of the deal from hell that we have with them? Really, why? Why haven't we done that? I mean, it's not like anybody is really going to crucify us for it, because they keep on giving us evidence why we have absolutely no reason to play nice with them. We're the freedom people. Why would anybody be upset about us saying, we don't want to be in an agreement with a country that canes bloggers, forbids women from driving unless they're Bedouin, and otherwise represses women to the extent that, it's absolutely out of control. I mean, their men have Facebook groups discussing the proper ways to beat their wives. And Facebook, by the way, turns a blind eye on it. Or at least they used to. I don't try to look for those groups. It's depressing and it makes me angry, and I might get myself thrown off of Facebook and just get in trouble in general for saying that, I need a bullwhip to go after the men. And I'm not even into that myself. I don't know. Anyway, what does the Marxist say? And of course, it was really amusing because, he likes the theory of Marxism, but he doesn't like what it does in practice. I'm thinking, what? How does that work? And he says they do it wrong. That only Marx could do it right. So it's not going to happen because he's dead. So I guess this is one of those, I believe in this thing, but it's never going to happen because the only man that could do it right has been dead for many years. Now, if he's absolutely truthful in that respect, I'm all for him believing whatever the heck he does. But I did find it amusing because I know Dana Lash, a few other people, they've become very special friends with the TSA over the years. He got flagged because of carrying and wearing a fair amount of Marxist garbage when flying back from Italy. So, if you ever get depressed about the government, screwing with conservatives, remember that they did go after a Marxist too. So, good times. Reassuring, lovely situation. It's the bottom of the hour. I will be right back after the news, talking about something other than the gun control and Marxists, I promise.
This is Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 14th. The Tampa Bay Police Department is investigating after a SWAT team killed a man and an informant later admitted to giving police false information that led to the raid. The man, Jason Westcott, was shot by police officers conducting a no-knock warrant at his home. Westcott, believing his home was being robbed, had grabbed his gun to protect himself. Police initially said the investigation of Westcott began because of neighbor complaints, but when reporters found no neighbors who had called the police and no records of complaints, the police department revised their assertion, saying the case began on a tip from an informant who bought marijuana from Westcott. The raid on Westcott's home did turn up marijuana, but the amount was only approximately $2 worth, and Westcott had no previous criminal record. In his first State of the State address, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey put an education at the front and center of his speech. Governor Ducey proposed the creation of the Arizona Public School Achievement District to provide new ways for more students to have equal access to the state's best-performing charter schools. More room would be made in part by turning over vacant space at district schools to charter and private schools and allowing the state to guarantee construction loan for charter schools, saving millions of dollars in interest payments. Governor Ducey's address also expressed openness to working with the minority Democrats and an attempt to balance the state's budget by freezing state employee hiring, except for public and child safety positions. U.S. taxpayers are paying more than $300 million to the Afghan National Police, but reports indicate a large portion of that money is going to officers who don't actually exist. According to an audit by the Special Investigator General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, the U.S. government continues to pay the overhead for the ANP, but there is no supervision over the allotment of funds. In a previous audit in 2011, the Special Investigator found many weaknesses in the payroll process, including unverified and lacking data. ANP identification cards have been implemented to help combat fraud, but the audit finds there are almost twice as many ID cards in circulation as there are active officers. And other attempts to combat fraud have not been effective either. And the story of Martin Pistorius, who fell ill to a rare and progressive disease while living in South Africa in 1988, is lighting up social media. The disease left Martin in a vegetative state, and doctors said they had run out of options. For 12 years, Martin's parents cared for him at home and with the help of a special care center. What they did not know is that Martin regained some mental consciousness 2 years after he fell ill. Trapped in his body but with a functioning mind, Martin battled depression and used his mental capabilities to regain some control over his life. As his mindset improved, so did his neurological developments, and at age 26, an evaluation determined Martin was able to identify what was going on around him. His mother quit her job and helped Martin regain motor function. Martin, now 39, went on to graduate college with a degree in computer science, started a web company, and wrote a book. He now lives in England with his wife. This has been Amy Curtis with your Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 14th.
Hi, this is Jason Dibbler, co-host of Q with a View, heard every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on FTR Radio. Right now, FTR needs your help in making the jump into the 21st century through some long-needed equipment upgrades. This is where you, the great and loyal listeners of Great Conservative Talk Radio, can really lend a hand. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR right now. Your assistance, no matter how small, will help to ensure that FTR can continue to offer some of the best conservative radio on the interwebs. Your donation of $50 gets you up to 60 seconds of airtime on FTR Radio 4 times. For $100, your ad will run 10 times, or if you don't want to run an ad, you can have 30 minutes of FTR airtime to talk about anything you want. There are other thank yous for other levels of giving as well, but those are some pretty great offers. We hope you'll consider making a small donation to help keep quality conservative talk radio alive and thriving on the internet. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR today. Thank you.
Hi, this is Steve Hamilton, station director at Altcon Radio, and that sultry voice you're listening to is Liz Harrison on The Liz Harrison Show.
promised mostly no talk about gun control, but there is a different angle, and I'll get to that. But first things first. Okay. I was looking around on the Twitter for a little while earlier today, and an old fellow traveler of mine, Warner Todd Houston, I believe is how he pronounces the last name, Huston. If you're not following at Warner T, Huston on Twitter, you need to be doing that. He and I crossed paths many eons ago on, as was Red County. Now he's one of the bigs, or at least had been, over on Breitbart. Occasionally writes for Canada Free Press. In this case, he's on Liberty News. And he was talking about the Chris Cuomo on CNN. Because you gotta love the media bias, right? Now, I'm going to read what he actually said because he's a great wordsmith and he makes it pretty clear. So much for being reporters. A CNN anchor has now promised that CNN will turn Obama shill and use its reporting to try and force the GOP to accept Obama's education policies. With this admission that CNN is no longer just reporting the news but an active political operative for Obama, this is yet another reason to distrust anything you see on CNN. The cable network is no, quote, news network, but is instead a propaganda outfit for Team Obama. So, to quote Cuomo, it says, quote, Secretary, my only advice for you is that you should go on a shame campaign with Congress to get them to act. New Day will help. CNN will help. Really? Now, we all know the liberals accuse Fox News of being, well, no news and just shilling for the Republican Party. There's only one problem. You can go straight across the board among the various individuals that are the face of Fox News and not get the same answer. They are not, they report news as they are supposed to. They carry local news to the national stage. And when the talking heads on the station, because I'm not going to BS anybody, of course there is programming that is largely commentary. These individuals are individuals. They don't necessarily agree with Republican leadership or much of anyone else. That's why when you go across the board and you ask them, who do you support for the presidency in 2016, you will get different answers. They are not offering a manufactured response that has been created by the establishment. Wow. But in Cuomo's case, he's supposed to be doing news. Just saying. Because New Day, well, never mind. I'm not going to try to pick apart the programming choices and everything else on CNN because it might make my eyes bleed or something. Anyway. Gotta love it. And on the gun control point, I'm going to be fair in the interests of, being completely honest. Last night, the issue came up to me because an individual who does talk radio in the Pittsburgh market had people on the air discussing this issue. I'm pretty certain, and I'm hoping, I am absolutely certain, that this individual had actually given a full half hour to the pro side of this bill, this law, as was a bill. But I'm not sure, because I tuned in late. So, and at the end he was apologizing and saying that he wished that he could have had the person on longer, and then immediately after the break, in waltzes the side opposed to the law, and the schmoozing begins. So, yeah, it was noticeable. There was no secret that the talk show host definitely was more enamored. No, yeah, I could say maybe because the second one was a woman, but yeah, that would be mean. So we're not going to suggest that, but seriously, folks, I mean, if I was going to do that, if I was, instead of going and spouting off my own thoughts, I was going to have guests on a specific issue, I would try to keep it relatively equal, at least. I mean, sometimes that can't be done, especially if you have them both on at the same time. It's called talking over each other. We've all seen it. Sometimes you have one side or the other that is more pushy. But if I was doing it in the format of the gentleman last night, one and then the other, yeah, I would definitely carve out the same amount of time. Equal time, folks. Goes back to the whole concept that I will defend your right to say something even if I totally disagree with you. Which brings me to something that was brought up briefly on the 5. I bothered to look it up on Adweek. Was McDonald's signs ad on the Golden Globes inspiring or abominable? Not everyone was loving it, to put it mildly. Now, the Twitter response, and honestly, it looks like the industry response, was really, really horrible. The majority of the tweets offered in the news story on Adweek looked like, let's see how many were there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were opposed. 4 were for it. So even there they went. But maybe they weren't able to find a 5th one that was relevant to their audience, because they obviously look like they were picking industry type folk as opposed to Joe Blow on the street. But anyway. The signs ad in question shows the McDonald's marquees where the local McDonald's may go and say they support one thing or another. The unfortunate fact is that because it was a commercial, all of these items existed in a vacuum. Okay? So you didn't exactly know why, necessarily, why the various signs were used. Particularly one, it said, "Keep jobs in Toledo." And people were complaining that it seemed kind of tone deaf. Well, maybe it did, existing in that vacuum, just being in that 1 minute, let's see, how long was it? I believe it was about a minute long spot on air. But it wasn't about McDonald's at all. It had something to do with a factory in Toledo. Now, anybody who's been to Toledo, they can't afford to lose a factory. And it could be argued that the McDonald's was putting, that particular McDonald's was putting up the sign in the sign of self-preservation. And so what if they were? Because the McDonald's location was right near the factory, so arguably a lot of the employees would stop there on their way in and out. But no, it wasn't making a statement about anything that McDonald's itself was doing. They were showing support for their community. They were showing that they were for the workers in a factory that was in danger of being shut down. So is it really so bad? And they picked on the music choice, the children's choir doing Carry On. But, and then of course there were the complaints about paying a living wage. Please, people, stop. It's insulting. It really is. It is not remotely close to reality. Okay, because the $15 an hour that you're asking for, to place it in perspective, individuals who go to school for massage therapy can end up working in a massage envy to start at $15 an hour, depending upon what market they are in, because of course minimum wages, quote unquote, for labor that actually requires some degree of training will vary from urban center to urban center, and if they're outside of an urban center, they tend to be lower altogether, like suburban areas, because the cost, it has to do with the cost of living, obviously. It has to do with market demands. But in general, yes, it is possible for a massage therapist to end up starting out at $15 an hour. How in the world do you justify saying that you deserve $15 an hour for something that does not require schooling? You can't. Oh, and by the way, you sit there and say, but if we increase the minimum wage, then all of those people's wages will go up. Well, yes and maybe no. But regardless, if that is the case, guess what? Your pay raise doesn't matter. Because do you think that these businesses out there are not going to raise their prices? Of course they will. You're going to be right back where you started from, or maybe worse off. You will probably be worse off. They are in business to make money. If they don't make money, they will not employ people. If they don't employ people, people won't have jobs. And as far as McDonald's goes, your replacement is already in the works. Automation, baby. Anyway, in answer to the question on the McDonald's ad that everybody found so objectionable, they explain the signs in multiple videos and in multiple posts on mcdonalds.tumblr.com. So, every sign tells a story. That's the claim there. And they do a good job of it. When they exist just in the ad, I'll agree. It is possibly a little bit upsetting. But let's be real, folks. Come on. These McDonald's franchises, their owners, when they are not corporate, tend to go and build relationships with the community. And who says that McDonald's is wrong to sit there and promote this? I could think of another restaurant chain that does the same thing. It's called Applebee's. Ever been to one? I'm not sure of how far they go. But here in the local area, and everywhere that I go where Applebee's exists, you go in there and they have photos of all of the local sports teams, all of the high school teams, multiple school districts if necessary. So arguably you could see, high school rival teams hanging right next to each other on the wall, but they attempt to, even down to the design of their restaurant, build a relationship with the community where they do business. It's not corporate bullshit. It is a statement saying that that corporation wants to build a vested interest in the community where it resides. And yeah, they do wonderful things like if you go and have an organization in the town that needs to raise money for something. In our case, we have a church that needs a new roof. Guess what? We were able to go and take flyers in there and have a portion of the checks from everybody that had one of those flyers for one full day. The money went to the church to pay for the roof. Wow. And it should go without saying, McDonald's, what do? They have McDonald's charities. And here's something that people may or may not realize. There are quite a few photos in the ad that go and show broken down signs and a McDonald's that's actually underwater. When you have a disaster in your area, yeah, the Red Cross shows up, the Salvation Army, but so does McDonald's. When you have a military base in your town, your soldiers come home, the families show up, the press shows up to do the whole cute pictures of the soldiers saying hello to their families when they come back. But you know who else is probably there too? Oh yeah, McDonald's. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. These people know who their customers are. But you're going to crucify them for it because you think that they don't pay the people enough money. Really? No. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't fly with me because, if it got to the point where if I went to McDonald's, that 5 out of 10 times I didn't end up with something wrong with my order, then maybe we'd talk. They've been around for a very long time. Like most other fast food restaurants, they have a relatively high turnover rate when it comes to their employment. And they also have, depending on where they are, an attitude issue. I'm sorry. You don't get the right to sit there and say that we need to radically increase your pay grade when you can't even manage to do the job you're given right. Just saying. Don't even bother it. Don't bother with it at all. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. And McDonald's is not the end point for someone unless you're going into it with the idea in mind that you're going to move up and eventually become a franchisee. So that's a McDonald's career, by the way. A career in McDonald's is not going in there as a student. It is not going in there as a smart-ass worker that will probably end up working there for the rest of their lives, but never takes the initiative to move up. Nope, that's not a career. It's a job. There's a difference. Minimum wage jobs are entry level. They are not lifelong. They are not meant to be life sustaining. They are not meant to be breadwinners. It's a starting point, or an ending point, or an in-between point. But the in-between point is somebody who needs some extra money and they do some seasonal help somewhere, or somebody just wants to have extra money for this, that, or the other and doesn't want to be stuck at home all the time. But the income is not necessarily needed. And as far as the end point is concerned, there are retired people who work, and honestly a lot of the time work harder than their younger counterparts. And they either do it so they have extra money, or if they got totally screwed as far as their pensions and retirement were concerned, then they're doing it so they can make their bills. But they already know how to work, and they work hard. McDonald's, any other minimum wage job, is not a career. It is a supplemental income, or it's a starting off point. That's it. People need a reality check, because if you're promoting this as how to make it in this world, you really are trying to promote a permanent underclass. Way to go. Way to go. Anyway. Quit picking on the McDonald's, by the way. If you saw the ad and it annoyed you, do yourself a favor. Look them up on the Tumblr, mcdonalds.tumblr.com, and take a look at them and put the signs in context and then decide. I know it's theoretically corporate propaganda, but it's dangerous for them to lie. Keep that in mind. Because if people would figure out that they were lying about what they said on the site, it would do far more harm to their image than anything else. So, yeah, don't sit there and assume that they're lying and trying to make themselves look better than they actually are. They're not. They really aren't, because that would be suicidal. Bad, bad idea. Anyway. It's going to be a long day. I mentioned the Charlie Hebdo. I'm wondering how many people are going to be... I caught it yesterday on Twitchy. People were picking on Arnold Schwarzenegger. For, at least they were on Facebook in responses to their post about Arnold getting the magazine, subscribing to it. I wonder how many people are going to turn this into... you must have this magazine or you suck type deal. Let's see. I mean, I'm all for showing them support. I'm just wondering how far will it go as far as a freedom status symbol is concerned. Anyway, it's about that time. If you want to listen in, 2 o'clock p.m., right mics are on. And, of course, this evening, Liberty Unfiltered at 9 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Modern Comments, 11 p.m. The Right War. Have a good afternoon, folks.